Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Make some noise in the comments and let me know where you're watching from tonight. Are you ready to get this thing started? All right, let's do it. Tonight we're going to be tackling one of the, I don't even know what to call her, most iconic, most controversial, most talented WWE superstars of all time, Charlotte Flair. And P.O., I mean, the accolades speak for themselves. 14-time women's champion. Legendary status, but now there's a lot more to Charlotte Flair than just the championships and the accolades. She's also been involved in some, I don't know, sketchy matches, some very interesting promos, and well, she just does things a little bit differently. So what gives? Is she a villain that we love to hate, or is she a hero that we just don't understand? That's what we're here to find out on this deep dive into the career of Charlotte Flair. Now, before we get started, I gotta know, are you a true WWE fan? Hit that WWE fan in the comments if you're a part of the WWE universe. All right, let's get into it. First off, when you think about Charlotte Flair, I mean,
where does your mind go?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that's so fascinating about Charlotte is that you really can't deny her athleticism and her in-ring skill. I mean, she's capable of putting on some truly unforgettable matches, but at the same time, there's this undeniable aura of, I don't know, controversy that kind of follows her wherever she goes.
It's like she's always walking this tightrope between being one of the most captivating performers and also being somebody that kind of makes you want to like pull your hair out a little bit. You know, like you love her and you hate her sometimes at the same time. And I think one of the most glaring examples of this is her match with Nia Jax back in 2021. Now, things got real quick in that match, and it was pretty clear that they went off script. Now, before we go any further, for those of you who may not know, a shoot in professional wrestling basically means something that is not planned, not a part of the storyline. It's supposed to be a real-life fight breaking out in the middle of a performance. So have you ever seen a match go that wrong? Because that's what happened with Nia and Charlotte. I mean, things got dangerous, and it really left people wondering, like, what is going on behind the scenes with these two?
Yeah, I mean, that match really blurred the lines between what was real and what was part of the show. You could feel the tension, and it felt like this raw, unscripted energy that you don't usually see in a choreographed match. And it really, I think, fueled this perception of Charlotte as somebody who maybe is, I don't know, a little bit challenging to work with.
A little bit difficult.
Maybe.
And that leads us into the way that Charlotte interacts with fans and other wrestlers. I mean, she has had some very interesting moments that left people kind of scratching their heads. Like, remember when WWE returned to live audiences after the pandemic and Charlotte just flipped off the crowd? Bold move. Now I get it. I mean, this definitely played into her queen persona, and it really helped intensify her feud with Rhea Ripley. But some fans felt like she crossed the line. So what do you think? Was it all a part of the act, or did she take things a little bit too far?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, isn't it? Because in wrestling, the line between character and reality can be really blurry. So on the one hand, she's supposed to be this larger-than-life figure who commands attention, even if it means being provocative. But on the other hand, there's a level of respect that's expected, especially when it comes to interacting with fans. And that incident really put a spotlight on that delicate balance.
Totally. And it's not just the fans. She's had some controversial moments with other wrestlers as well. You know, there was that botched slap with Lacey Evans, which I think really kind of highlighted their lack of chemistry. And, I mean, let's be honest, that whole feud felt a little bit awkward from the jump. And then there was the incident during her feud with Nikki A.S.H., where she seemed to, I don't know, mock Simone Biles and her struggles with mental health, which sparked outrage, and rightfully so. I mean, using somebody's real-life mental health challenges to fuel a storyline. It's just, I don't even know what to say. It's beyond insensitive, so.
Did she miscalculate the impact of her words? Or was this a case of WWE's creative team taking things a little bit too far? I mean, it's tough to analyze, because even if it was a creative decision, you know, Charlotte ultimately delivers the lines. And this incident really left people wondering where the boundaries lie when it comes to incorporating real-life issues into wrestling storylines.
And then, let's not forget, that promo she cut on Paige, where she brought up Paige's deceased brother. I mean, that was rough. And it really raises questions about how far is too far. When it comes to cutting a promo, what do you think? Is Charlotte just playing a character? Or does she take things too far sometimes?
Well, I think it's interesting because wrestling thrives on blurring the lines between reality and fiction, but there are certain lines that should never be crossed, and bringing someone's personal tragedy into a feud feels exploitative and disrespectful.
Totally. And it seems like Charlotte has walked that line on several occasions, leaving fans and fellow wrestlers alike questioning her judgment. But let's move on to another part of Charlotte's career that has been surrounded by whispers. What happens backstage?
Yeah. Things get really interesting when we start peeking behind the curtain.
Right.
Because what happens in the ring is only part of the story.
Absolutely. And there have been rumors swirling around Charlotte for years about her being difficult to work with.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately. There are quite a few incidents that have fueled those rumors.
Right.
One that really stands out is the incident with Kairi Sane. She suffered a concussion. During a tag team match, Charlotte, she delivered a pretty brutal slap afterward. And people really question whether, the intensity was appropriate considering Kairi's already injured, accidents happen in wrestling. But I think this incident really added to the narrative of Charlotte being overly aggressive.
Right. It was tough to watch, for sure. And it made people wonder about Charlotte's judgment in the ring. And it's not just the in-ring stuff. That has been talked about. Charlotte's personal life has also been kind of played out in the public eye. I mean, her very public divorce and the ongoing drama with her dad, Ric Flair, haven't exactly painted her in the most favorable light. I mean, arrests, lawsuits, accusations flying back and forth. I mean, it's been messy, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's hard to separate those personal struggles from her public persona. I think wrestling fans are always looking for clues, trying to figure out what's real and what's kayfabe.
Right.
And when you have such a high-profile figure like Charlotte dealing with very public, personal issues, it's bound to raise questions and fuel speculation.
Right. It's like a soap opera playing out in real time. And it definitely adds to the intrigue surrounding Charlotte. Speaking of drama, we can't forget about the infamous title exchange segment with Becky Lynch. I mean, this is supposed to be this big moment, but it ended up feeling like a total train wreck. I mean, the tension between them was palpable, and it made everyone wonder about the backstage dynamics at play. What was your take on that whole situation?
Well, it seemed pretty clear that there was some bad blood between Charlotte and Becky at the time.
Right.
And the title exchange just amplified those tensions. It was a reminder that what we see on screen is often just a small part of a much bigger story, and sometimes those backstage conflicts bleed into the storylines, whether intentionally or not, and it can create some really compelling moments. But in this case, it felt more awkward than anything else.
Yeah. It felt like they were trying to force a storyline that wasn't really there, and it just ended up feeling clunky and uncomfortable. And, when we're talking about Charlotte's career and the choices that have been made, we have to address the elephant in the room, the female Roman Reigns label. What do you think about those comparisons? Is it fair to put them in the same category?
I mean, it's an interesting comparison.
Yeah.
Because both Charlotte and Roman were booked in a very dominant way early in their careers, and they both faced significant backlash from the audience. It's like WWE was trying to make them the top stars, whether the fans wanted it or not.
Right, and that's a tough spot to be in. You're incredibly talented, you're working hard, but you're constantly being booed or rejected by a portion of the audience. Not because of anything you're doing wrong, but because of how you're being presented.
Exactly, and it raises questions about how much control wrestlers actually have over their own narratives, because ultimately it's WWE's creative team that decides who gets pushed, who wins the titles, and how the stories are told.
Totally. It's like they were given these superhero roles without the chance to really connect with the audience on an emotional level. And it takes a special kind of talent to overcome that.
Right.
And still find a way to resonate with the fans.
I think they've both managed to do that to some extent, but it definitely hasn't been easy. But I think a key difference is that Roman eventually leaned into the villain role and kind of embraced the boos. Charlotte, on the other hand, has always seemed to want to be the hero, the one that the fans adore.
And that's where the frustration comes in for some fans. They see this incredibly talented woman who, at times, seems to be handed opportunities without having to work for them. They see other talented women being overlooked while Charlotte keeps racking up championships.
It's that perception of being chosen rather than earning it. That has fueled some of the criticism.
Right. And it's interesting because in recent years, it does seem like WWE has tried to shift Charlotte's presentation. She's taken on more of a veteran role, putting over younger talent and focusing more on telling compelling stories rather than just chasing titles.
Her recent program with Rhea Ripley is a great example of that. Yeah. She was still a queen, but she allowed Rhea to shine and grow as a performer.
Yeah, it was like she finally embraced the idea that she could be a valuable asset to the division, even without being champion all the time. And that's a sign of growth, not only as a performer, but as a person.
I think that evolution has been fascinating to watch. It's like we're seeing a more nuanced side of Charlotte, someone who's willing to share the spotlight and help elevate others. Makes you wonder if the shift came from a genuine change in her approach to the business, or if it was a reaction to the years of fan criticism.
It's hard to know for sure, but the results have been undeniable. Her work has been more layered, more emotionally resonant, and she's proven that she can be just as captivating when she's not holding a championship. It's almost like there are two Charlotte Flairs. You know, the dominant, somewhat polarizing figure of her early years, and the more mature, story-driven performer that we see today.
And that duality makes her such a compelling character. I mean, she's complex, she's flawed, she makes mistakes, but she also has this incredible drive and determination to succeed. She's not afraid to push boundaries, even if it means ruffling a few feathers along the way.
Yeah, and that's what makes her such a fascinating subject for a deep dive, you know, because at the end of the day, we're still trying to figure out who Charlotte Flair really is. Is she the villain, the hero, or something else entirely?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I think it's a question that each fan has to answer for themselves.
It's all about perspective, right? What one person sees as arrogance, another might see as confidence. What one person sees as ruthlessness, another might see as ambition.
And that's the beauty of professional wrestling. It's subjective, it's emotional, and it sparks these passionate debates among fans.
And Charlotte Flair is a lightning rod for those debates, and that's what makes her such an important figure in the world of WWE. She forces us to confront our own biases, our own ideas about what a hero or a villain should be. She challenges our expectations and keeps us guessing. And ultimately, isn't that what makes wrestling so entertaining?
Absolutely. It's the drama, the intrigue, the unpredictability. That keeps us coming back for more.
Well, folks, we've unpacked the controversies, we've analyzed the booking, we've explored the evolution of her character. But the question remains, is Charlotte Flair a force for good in professional wrestling?
That's a question that could spark a whole other depth dive, because her impact on the industry is undeniable, but it's definitely been a mixed bag.
I mean, on the one hand, she is a phenomenal athlete who has broken barriers and elevated women's wrestling. I mean, she has inspired countless young women to pursue their dreams, and that's a legacy. That should not be overlooked.
Yeah, there's no denying her influence and her role in changing the landscape of women's wrestling, but at the same time, you know, her journey has been marked by these controversies and questionable decisions that have at times overshadowed her accomplishments.
It's almost like she's two sides of the same coin. You know, this incredibly talented and driven athlete who's also been accused of being reckless, insensitive, and even manipulative at times. So how do we reconcile those two versions of Charlotte Flair?
I think it's important to acknowledge both the good and the bad, the triumphs and the missteps, because that's what makes her such a complex and fascinating figure. She's not a simple hero or a villain. She's something in between.
She's a human being, flaws and all, who happens to be operating on a very public stage. And maybe that's what makes her so relatable, even when we disagree with her choices.
Yeah, I mean, we see ourselves in her struggles, her ambitions, her desire to be the best. And maybe that's what keeps us watching, even when she pushes us to our limits.
It's like she holds up a mirror to our own complexities, our own contradictions. As wrestling fans, you know, we want our heroes to be perfect, but we're also drawn to the drama, the conflict, the imperfections that make them human.
Yeah. And Charlotte Flair embodies that tension perfectly. She's a walking contradiction, a force of nature who can inspire both admiration and frustration.
Maybe that's her legacy, you know, that she challenges our perceptions of what a wrestler, a champion, a woman in this industry can be. She refuses to be put in a box, and that makes her one of the most compelling figures in WWE, even after all these years.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. She is a constant source of conversation, of debate, of passion, and that's ultimately what keeps wrestling alive and thriving.
Absolutely. So on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the controversial career of Charlotte Flair. We've covered a lot of ground, explored the highs and lows, the cheers and the jeers.
It's been quite the journey, hasn't it? And I hope we've provided some food for thought, some new perspectives on this incredibly complex and fascinating figure.
Absolutely. But now it's your turn to weigh in. What's your take on Charlotte Flair? Is she a force for good? Or does her presence do more harm than good? Hit those comments. Let's keep this conversation going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future deep dives. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep.